Good morning. Good morning. Hello. Welcome. We are live, baby. What is this? October 17th, 2023. This is our daily session, the Premarket Prep session, where we go over all the important news, notes, data, economic calendar points, pieces of information that are necessary to laying the landscape when it comes to the stock market, right? Trading markets, executing in markets, and doing so in a way that can allow you to consistently build your account up over time. Right? It takes a system in order for something to work successfully. And this pre-market prep session is a part of that system. It's a cog in that system, getting you ready to execute when that market bell rings. If it's time to execute, it also might get you ready to temper your expectations when that market bell rings. Not every day is going to be a day when you want to be out here ripping and running and, trading markets nonstop, right? Yesterday was a day with majority kind of sitting, observing, waiting, right? If you were ripping and running in the market yesterday, things were likely difficult, right? Because we had a lot of weird movement. So it's important to be able to tell the difference. And this session is really a big part of that. So good morning, Vivian, Detrice, Michelle, Andrea, Sharon, Alicia, Vanessa, Paul, Coco. Good morning, all you beautiful, amazing, driven, spirited people. Let's get into what we got going on for today, and make sure whether you're watching live or via replay, you're doing one thing, and that's dropping your one in the chat. You want to signify your intention to get 1% better, right? That's what we're trying to do each and every day. I want to hammer that home. 1% better, 1% better, 1% better. You don't have to do anything crazy. You don't have to change the world. Just get 1% better by the time you lay your head down on that pillow and you've accomplished what you wanted to do today. And you've utilized that hack of time flying, because time does fly. It's an amazing thing when you're making sure that you're doing something to get you 1% better each and every day, because the time goes by and you're like, wow, I'm so much better at this thing than I used to be. Right. So in terms of top news, earnings watch, we're going full-fledged into earnings season, right? This isn't the biggest week. We're just getting started really with Netflix and Tesla this week, but we will definitely ramp up. And earnings season is always an important time. It can sometimes be a difficult time to navigate, which is important to recognize. We can get a lot of indecision by the market, right? Until it gets the data from these companies. You got to make sure you watch where you step, you watch what you swing, because there's a lot that can be impacted, right, by these big household names reporting. It's really only a few companies that determine which way the stock market goes, right? And you have those companies that are making big announcements over the course of the next few weeks. So that's something you always want to keep in the background of your head here. But in terms of earnings watch, as the third quarter earnings season kicks into high gear after banks were off to a strong start, most experts believe companies will beat expectations given the low bar set by analysts in the backdrop of still high interest rates and slowing demand. Quote, I'm seeing plenty of caution and outlooks ahead of this earnings season, and the bar seems to be set quite low, said investing group leader Fear and Greed Trader. Market Views, LSEG's Refinity expects overall Q3 earnings for S&P 500 companies to increase 1.3% year over year. While this is a relatively small growth, it would mark the first increase after 3 quarters of flat or declining profits. Quote, growth expectations for 2023 are 2.3%, the lowest since 2020, said analyst Tajinder Dhillon, noting that Q3 is expected to be a small contributor, while Q4 will likely see a growth rate of 10.8%. On the other hand, analysts tracked by Bloomberg Intelligence are expecting S&P 500 companies' Q3 earnings to dip 0.8% year over year, while Q4 will see a 6.2% rebound. I think it's important in terms of like breaking down this information, realizing that, okay, we're seeing renewed kind of optimism when it comes to earnings expectations. That's important because expectations are everything in markets, right? Everything in trading. What is expected and what happens. The difference between those two things, what's expected and what happens, is what results in market movement, right? If something drastically different from what was expected happens, we get big market movement. If something right in line with expectations of what happens occurs, then typically we don't get a whole lot of crazy market movement because those expectations were already priced in. Right. So the fact that we have more optimistic expectations and we're expecting growth means that the bar isn't set as low as it has been in the past. When the bar is set low, it makes it easy for these companies to report earnings, they're bad earnings, but they can trip and fall over the bar and still make it, right? Because the expectations are so low. Now that we have higher expectations, if companies still fall short of these higher expectations, right, then that can make room for more downside movement, right? Because we have misses and expectations higher than expected, right? When expectations are low, it's easy to meet them. When they're higher, you have a bigger chance of a miss, and as a result, a bigger chance of these companies having, large gaps down or gap ups, right? That mismatch in expectations means a lot. Now, in terms of sector watch, Refinitiv's Dylan expects the industrials and consumer staples sector to continue their streak of positive year-over-year earnings growth. Sectors expected to post Q3 earnings decline include materials, healthcare, and real estate. Energy will likely see weaker earnings on account of more difficult year-over-year comparisons. Seeking Alpha analyst David Traynor noted that 71% of S&P 500 companies have street earnings higher than core earnings, while street earnings are lower than core earnings for 27% of the companies. Now, in terms of stocks to watch this week, we'll see earnings reports from big names including Tesla, AT&T, Netflix, Kinder Morgan, Philip Morris. Johnson & Johnson reported Q3 results that topped estimates, while Bank of America also posted an earnings beat. Goldman Sachs and United Airlines are scheduled to report later today. Now, in terms of energy news, easing sanctions. The Biden administration and the Venezuelan government have agreed to a deal in which the U.S. would ease sanctions on Venezuela's oil industry in exchange for allowing an open, internationally monitored presidential election next year. Venezuela's government and opposition will resume long-suspended talks today in Barbados, where the Maduro government and Venezuela's U.S.-backed opposition will sign a deal to include commitments for a freer vote in 2024. Oil prices steadied on hopes that U.S. sanctions would ease, with WTI crude oil futures staying flat after a 1.8% slide on Monday amid Middle East tensions. So this is important, right, because gas prices are up there. The Strategic Petroleum Reserve is at all-time lows, right? So at this point, we don't have a lot of, oil left in reserve. Oil prices are through the roof. We've got issues, with war going on still in Ukraine, war going on currently in Israel. And as a result of that, what is the Biden administration going to do? What every other U.S. presidential administration does, it's make questionable deals with questionable entities in order to get cheaper oil, right? So Venezuela and Nicolas Maduro's government is super corrupt. They literally behead people, right? They don't hold free elections. People that you don't want to do work with, right? But when your back's against the wall, you don't have many options. What do? You work with them. So that's exactly what's happened here. It's better than working with Iran, specifically given what's going on in Israel right now. So there just aren't a lot of many options. And the U.S. government is going with Venezuela here. So we'll see. They're meeting to ensure that there is a freer election that takes place in Venezuela this year. Wink, wink, right? And we'll see what happens with that. But we need oil. We go to people in order to get the oil. Kind of end of story here. In terms of tech news, default setting. Google's search deals account for roughly half of all U.S.-based search queries. A government witness said during a hearing for the landmark antitrust trial that the tech giant is facing. Quote, the power of the defaults is very significant, said Massachusetts Institute of Technology professor Michael Winston, who was hired by the Department of Justice to provide analysis for its case that Google's deals are anti-competitive, while claiming that Google's deals block out rivals such as Microsoft and DuckDuckGo from up to 50% of all US-based searches. Winston said another 20% of all domestic searches are made via Google Chrome. Earlier in the case, Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella also warned of Google's monopoly and flagged the risk of AI cementing its lead. It's important. People typically don't deviate from the defaults. I know I don't. Whatever is there for me to use as default is what I'm going to use. So the fact that it is, programmed as the default really across the board, across a number of different, hardware fronts, it provides a big boost to Google, right? And a big advantage for Google in terms of like competition and kind of maintaining a competitive landscape. It really can't be as long as Google is the default everywhere. So we'll see what ends up happening. But DuckDuckGo is something that's been increasingly more popular. They're like more secure. So a lot of government workers, especially in DC, use DuckDuckGo. So maybe we'll see that start to rival them. But until if it, like, for example, came as the default browser on all government workers' machines, maybe that starts to make a dent. I don't know, though. I feel like that's not enough to really rival Google's supremacy. But we'll see. They might end up making a ruling where Google can't be the default provider, anymore. And that would definitely dent Google's business moving forward. So this is actually one of the few cases of big tech companies being sued where this could actually have material impact on the stock, because if Google's no longer the default search engine on all these different tech devices, I think that severely impacts Google, right, in terms of like their ad revenue and all that. So in terms of media news, Swift's success at the movies this weekend, it was Taylor Swift's world and other films were just living in it. Taylor Swift, the Eras Tour, which documents the pop superstar's latest tour, dominated the weekend box office to end with $92.8 million domestically. That's a full 70% of the domestic industry box office. And it makes for the second best October domestic opening of all time, right behind 2019's Joker. So on a worldwide basis, Swift's film drew 123.5 million. The success is especially notable as Swift bypassed traditional distributors to deal directly with AMC Entertainment, ticker AMC. Note that this isn't the only concert film bonanza this year, as AMC is distributing Renaissance, a film by Beyonce, on December 1st. And I'm sure that the Beehive, the Bayhive, whatever they're called, will be in full force for that. In terms of today's markets, mixed bag. In Asia, Japan, we're up 1.2%, Hong Kong up 0.8%, China up 0.3%, India up 0.4%. In London, we're up 0.4%, Paris down 0.1%, Frankfurt down 0.2%, the Dow down 0.2%, S&P down 0.3%, NASDAQ down 0.3%, crude oil up 0.1%, Bitcoin up 2.7%. We had that really annoying Bitcoin pump and dump yesterday, right, which just kind of further underscores a lot of the sketchiness that needs to be evacuated from and really purged from the crypto space. We had, basically an entity release that, there, is approval for this spot Bitcoin ETF. And then it turns out that the approval is still pending and it wasn't actually true. And apparently a ton of Bitcoin was dumped when the price spiked on the news. So there's just so much price manipulation going on right now. And it just, it's just such a sketchy spot to be in, because it's like, what news is real? What news do you trust? So, Bitcoin and crypto as a whole just has to continue to undergo these purges in order to just no longer have to deal with these bad actors that are involved with such blatant fraud or, price manipulation or things like that. And everything's going to be manipulated in some way or another, right? There's always people in power. They're going to use that power to their advantage. But you just want to get to a point where it's kind of minimized and also not so blatant. So it's growing pains, but we all got to go through them. In terms of today's economic calendar, we get retail sales at 8:30, so those already came out. Housing inventories at 10, housing market index at 10. So we might have, some chop until 10 a.m. when we get that data. In terms of what else is happening, we've got our rapid fire stock news rundown to close us out. Allstate, ticker ALL, stock gains on report. Activist Trian Fund has taken a stake. Shell, ticker SHEL, surges to multi-year highs on strategy shift, rising energy prices. Microsoft, ticker MSFT, Microsoft's LinkedIn lays off 668 people in broader restructuring. Suncor, ticker SU, to stick to climate goals. CEO chides Canada energy policy. Kathy Wood is optimistic about spot Bitcoin ETF, expects bond rally. Jeff Bezos overtakes Bernard Arnault to be the world's second richest. Activist Starboard takes over 5% stake in Fortria Holdings, ticker FTRE. Duke Energy, ticker DUK, eyes further cuts in Florida customer bills. And then Hennessy Funds is bullish on stocks, these in particular. So that'll wrap us up, put a bow in it, and take us out here for this morning, October 17th, 2023. As always, we're putting forth our best foot each and every day to get 1% better. That's what we're trying to do. And you did that by being here. Now make sure it doesn't just stop here. It doesn't end here, that you continue to compound upon that, right? By making sure that you're executing on the opportunities that we outline in the market here. And that you're here each and every day investing in yourself. So watch out. We've got content dropping on Instagram today, right across all the platforms. You appreciate this. If you get any value from this content, make sure you show love there, right? It ain't free to put on the content, right? I'm sitting here and I do all this in order to make sure that if there are people out there that want to do better for themselves, that environment is created for them, right? Instagram doesn't reach out and pay me for the content that I put out, right? People don't reach out and pay me for that, right? I've got a team that puts that forward to make things as easy as possible and create an environment for, if you want to make positive change in your life, you can make it by being a part of this community, right? Not chasing money, not chasing the bag, because at the end of the day, I've been around the bag, right? Went to X school, did this, did that. Money does not equate to happiness, fulfillment, or purpose, right? We're chasing purpose. You want to use your money, put it to work, make sure it has a full-time job, right? So that you can buy back your time in order to do things that give you fulfillment, right? Whatever that may be, or taking the time to find out what gives you fulfillment. That is why we trade. That is why we execute in markets. It's not so you can get a bunch of money and go to Vegas and ruin your marriage, right? And your kids don't want to talk to you again, right? That's what money can do. Money is not the thing that's going to make you happy, right? We're doing this as a stepping stone toward achieving purpose. So I'll wrap it up there. Going to dive in, right? Purpose chasing and money follows, exactly, Detrice. So I'm going to wrap it up there. Without further ado, going to dive into the Facebook group, get that analysis, throw those trade ideas out, and we're ready to execute, make some money in the market today. Everybody have a great rest of your day. Look out for the reels posted today and every day on Instagram. And I'll see you back here tomorrow morning for our next pre-market prep session. Have a good one.